Okay, another weekly wrap up, Andres. Today is all about DXC, digital experience composition. Let's jump straight in. Thanks for joining me, of course.
Happy to be here as always. Yeah, let's jump in. So, first story I want to highlight today is agencies and DXC platform partnerships. So this was in something that caught an eye. It was on the Uniform blog, and it came from Dom Selvon. He's the global CTO at Apply Digital. It's a digital agency, and he's also a board member of the Mac Alliance. And the title of the article was "It's time for agencies to embrace DXCP," so digital experience composition platforms specifically. So one of the things mentioned said, across the agency and consultancy sector, there are companies who see the rise of DXCP as a threat to all the billable hours they've been able to charge in long, laborious process of connecting headless services. So Apply Digital says they've been incorporating DXCP into their map and composable strategies. And he thinks that's because, and they're doing it because he thinks that system integration is being commoditized. So the concept it's not like years before where you had to struggle to implement a checkout system in e-commerce, for instance. There's a lot of products that provide that service. It says the integration process is repetitive, it's time consuming, and it's often fraught with complexities, competing opinions, and different priorities. Then these agencies, they have engineers, not necessarily plumbers. So traditional agencies working in composable architectures, they can fall into the trap of connecting these headless tools with layers of glue code. Scaling and maintenance becomes difficult, and eventually the entire process turns so unwieldy that yet another expensive replatformer project is inevitable. So DXCP is then remove the need to write endless boilerplate code for connecting tools, and then these agencies to build enterprise-scale software based on commoditized elements in their stack. And consultancies like Apply Digital, they can plumb together composable elements like commerce without involving engineers, reducing integration time, and diverting emphasis toward effectual client tasks. So my thoughts is I think this is an interesting take on the role of DXCPs, digital experience composition. I think it's an interesting take. It's like we know it's a newer term that's going to come out in the industry. So Gartner are the ones that coined the term, but what I find interesting, they've also highlighted, like in the recent like Magic Quadrants, for instance, how many of the DXP and headless players that we know of, so like Magnolia and Psycor from the Magic Quadrant, but we've also seen Crafter CMS and highlighting some of their capabilities of DXC. A lot of these, they talk about the capability of headless CMSs, digital experience platforms, and enabling DXC. In terms of being digital experience composition platforms, uniforms there, but it's not really a fully defined category that's completely separate from digital experience just yet. Yeah. So I don't know. I think all of this, like this newness, and so it highlights the need for agencies who are going to evolve. They've got to become well versed on all aspects of composability, not just like specializing in one head and CMS, even though that's still be faster. But
I think there's a couple of interesting points here. So, firstly, the role of agencies, if you just mentioned it. So this blog post mentions that some agencies are scared by this prospect because they're going to lose out billable hours, right? They're no longer quote unquote needed for these long integration processes or building this glue code, right? And the glue code is another thing I'll come back to. But I think, like, not to say that they should still build the same hours, but my point being, there's still a big need for agencies, but just in a different way. Before it was, okay, we're an agency, we're going to specialize in working with one or two, maybe three CMSs max, one or two personalization platforms, so on and so forth. And then that'll probably be it. And then they'll just depending on what the client wants, they'll go out and find, a suitable project, a suitable tool. Now that there's a greater onus on them to know this sort of Mac market, this composable software market, and have existing, integrations built, whether it's by Uniform, whether it's by themselves as an agency, they have that in-house, whether the head of CMS has built those integrations for them and they're working together on that. But there's this greater need now for more integrations happening across a broader landscape, rather than just one agency choosing a small corner to work in. There now needs to be more knowledge, more collaboration across the board, right? because this trend is definitely is going somewhere. We're not exactly sure. Is uniform and the likes of uniform going to sort of push this, outsourcing of the glue code, if you will? We're going to outsource that. We're going to try and sort of automate that as much as possible with a uniform handling it. There's another platform coming through called Motif Solutions, which is in its infancy, but again along the same lines. Unifying your content across all your CMS systems, orchestrating your CMS is orchestrating the different microservices. So this orchestration trend is definitely here to stay. Will it be through those orchestration companies that we have this sort of the broader landscape being more accessible? Will it be the agencies who lead the way and say, you know what, we're going to just try our best to expand our ecosystem so that we've got 3 to 4 contacts in every, A/B testing and CDP and everything, so they've got like a built out ecosystem? Is it going to be the head of CMSs? You mentioned a couple there, Crafters CMS, Magnolia, who are building their own DXCP, if you will. There's a few different avenues you can go down, but for sure, the need is there. And going back to the glue code thing, I kind of just mentioned it really, but I remember a couple of years ago, some headless CMSs were, even up till now actually, positioning themselves as the glue code, right? They were saying, our headless CMS will be that glue code for you. You've got existing platforms, legacy platforms. Our APIs will do the heavy lifting, so you don't have to. And again, that sort of turned into these platforms or position themselves as a digital experience composition platforms. But that trend is still going too, right? We're seeing plugin marketplaces opening up, that kind of thing. So there's multiple ways that this is happening. I'm not sure which one will become the dominant way. But one thing's for sure is that I don't feel like agencies should be threatened by this at all, because even if their sort of quote unquote billable hours are reduced on one end, I feel like they're needed on the other side, which is like, which platform should that enterprise be using in the first place? They need their consultant. You need to consult them on that. You need to guide them on that, and they need to help them choose. Okay, you want to use Sanity and this CDP with this e-commerce headless platform and this checkout. Cool. We could use a uniform because they've got those integrations there, or we could build something more bespoke for you. So there's plenty of ways for work to be done, to be frank. But it's an interesting trend. There's a few different ways it's happening, and we'll see which one sort of becomes the dominant way, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna be interesting to see how that goes. So next up, we have the notion of composable mindset. So another thing in the call to action section. So this came under, it's actually a LinkedIn post that I came across from Marcus Lorenz. He's an e-commerce consultant at Datrix, and basically digital experience consultants. I think they work for like HighGraph, Commerce Tools, and vendors like that. So he mentioned in the post, titled it "The Dilemma of Conway's Law in Combination with Composable Commerce." So it was part of an article they written on LinkedIn, but also had a subsequent post about it. So Conway's Law is an adage that states organizations design systems that mirror their own communication structure. And as it relates to composable commerce, suggests that the structure of a company is a reflection of the structure of its software architecture, which is a major challenge for composable commerce. So that's to say, if the silos exist within an organization, they're going to manifest themselves in the products and services the organization produces. But he adds that if we recognize the impact of organization silos and take proactive steps to break them down, business can create a more cohesive and collaborative environment that supports the principles of composable commerce. So it needs more of a rethink of traditional department structures, needs to focus more on cross-functional teams, and invest in technology that enables that communication and collaboration. So some thoughts out on this were, first of all, like, I wasn't really aware of this law, but it makes perfect sense. Like, if the way you communicate and organize things, that could influence how you build something. Definitely composability is definitely, I think it definitely is more of a mindset thing. Like, we always talk about the technical aspects, the culture, and the technical aspects and the architecture of it. But it's really a cultural thing as well. Like, you can't adopt composable, headless, mock, anything of that nature unless you're strategically ready for it. Like, you have to know, okay, we as an organization are ready for this. And it's something where agencies and system integrators, their knowledge, their advice is crucial for the adoption of it. because they can advise if like the particular system is ready for it, if this tool is the right fit for that organization, and
Exactly.
basically become that consultant.
For sure. You hit the nail on the head. I think this is another example of where agencies will be even more needed, right? We're going into this more composable architecture, trend. The onus is on the agencies to build something that will not create an environment for those issues to rear their head, right? If there's already silos previously, more than likely it's a cultural,
Yeah.
social, departmental issue in the company. Technology doesn't solve those issues. It can help them, it doesn't totally solve it. So yeah, as you said, it's on the agencies to use the right tools and to build those integrations in the right way, to make sure that things don't get lost and silos don't emerge and that kind of thing. Content doesn't have to be duplicated again and again. And that's not always because the software is requiring it, right? Sometimes it's just because, again, departmental issues.
Yeah.
Another thing here is, like I said, software doesn't solve these things, but one thing Composable will do for a lot of companies is it will just highlight where the line was, where it's like, okay, we had problems because we had like a lot of legacy systems or one big legacy monolith in place that wasn't really, helping us.
Mm-hmm.
But now we've got this composable thing and we're still seeing these issues. That will help highlight where, oh, okay, this is actually like a company culture issue or a company communication issue, right? So I think even if you're going to run into those issues after you migrate to a composable architecture, it's a good thing because it's going to show you where those cracks are inside your company. And then once you know where they are, you can fix them. But yeah, it's another example of software doesn't solve everything. It's just like it can help, but it won't solve like fundamental issues for sure.
Yeah, and I think that that extends even from the concept of digital transformation, because I know like in the last year or so, like the focus has been on composable and composable architectures, Mark, what have you. But 2-3 years ago, when it was just headless being like the only thing that all these companies were thinking about, and just when like things like the pandemic were starting, a lot of companies were really looking at themselves like, can we go digital? Can we do this? Digital transformation was the topic of discussion, and it still is for a lot of companies. And that's a big part of composable as well. It probably isn't in recent times. It probably isn't mentioned as much because a lot of companies have already started that because they had to go set themselves up to operate remotely and whatnot. But I think that's another interesting segue that a lot of composable companies, composable vendors probably need to highlight again.
Yeah, and I think it's mentioned in either in your notes or in the LinkedIn post about rethinking traditional departmental structures. I think this is something that we're going to see. This is kind of off a tangent, but there's definitely departments, should marketing and sales be different departments as we move forward? As the technology moves closer, just like, sales are going to be having a much bigger impact on like the content that goes out, right? And vice versa. Marketing can have an impact on the things sales are saying in a much more sort of higher velocity way, right? Just because the software is there to support it, right? You've got a software that allows us to just like, go in, once again, almost like, back in the WordPress days, we'll go in, edit it, and that will go across all our platforms, all our channels, so on and so forth. So some of those departmental divides, there's always push and pull between sales and marketing. There may need to be, a total rethink of what that looks like, right? Should they be two separate departments at this point? And that goes for other departments too. We mentioned Crafter CMS earlier. They coined the dev content ops trend as well. They talk about dev content ops. That also opens the doors and asks questions about traditional departmental lines and divides. Right? Where does that stop? So I think that's an interesting trend in and of itself. And I imagine it makes sense to me that we'll see a few companies changing the way things work like that over the next couple of years as composable takes more root. I think that makes sense to me. Yeah,
definitely.
Okay, I think we're done, almost on the 15-minute mark, so nicely timed one. Anything else?
No, I think that's it for today. See what happens next week.
Absolutely. Andres, thank you for your time, and we'll speak again soon.